or Robyn. Introduce yourselves. Let's see how it goes.
Hi, my name is Robyn.
Oh.
I am in the graduate teacher licensure
Just
program.
like see if you actually had to say anything.
Hi, my name's Robyn, and this is Courtney, and this is Alana, and we're all living our best lives. And I am here, actually we're all here, in the Master's in Education and Human Development program, teaching in diverse contexts. When we graduate in May, we will also get our teaching licenses in secondary English. So our dialogue today is about Anthropology 101, and it contains 10 lessons and 10 challenges. It's created by this Associate Professor of Cultural Anthropology at Kansas State University, and all the lessons are based on his textbook that he wrote, and the challenges are things that he organically, I guess, came up with after that. They're all listed on the website. Teachers can sign up for this service. They can have their own course page, and actually the person who runs the website creates it for you, so it's really easy. And that way you can also create your own hashtags so your students can keep track of the work that they're doing as a class. There's more universal hashtags also that the entire website has, and that way you can connect to a larger global community. So what did you like or dislike about the topic or story?
This just seemed really applicable and stuff we could do in our own classroom, stuff we could do as people to better understand the people around us, but yet also to create, especially in an English classroom, which is so important, is to create sympathy and understanding. I think better labeled as empathy, but I don't want to misuse that. And,
empathy's good. Empathy is feeling the way that the other person feels versus just
so creating
feeling sorry for them.
Okay. I don't want to I always have had an issue with that. So I was I just never sure it's true. But so creating empathy in our students, which is something that I really strive to do in an English classroom, and I think taking some of these challenges and adapting them for whatever our book or a unit or whatever it may be, could be really useful for that.
Yeah, I liked, or for the same reasons that it's more, or how the lessons and big ideas are structured, it's more than just examining human nature, but also examining our own biases and forcing, based on the challenges, forcing us to step outside of our own comfort zones and take the initiative to communicate with people outside of whatever identity group that we align with. And I think that's particularly important given just our multicultural society.
In the digital age we're living in now, it's a globalized thing. They need to be able to understand.
And I think it's important, for students to be able to, understand kind of that global network, but also be able to learn how to communicate with people that are different than them, and also understanding their differences, but also being able to look at the commonalities between people across cultures. And
what I thought was interesting is that they had one about one of the 10 challenges was really early in the list, was breaking down your own. And it was something we were asked to do this summer, and it was something that was really interesting for me because I'd thought about some of it, but never to the extent that I was forced to do it with this class. And I think that would be a really interesting thing for our kids to check themselves before they go out there and wreck themselves.
So they don't wreck themselves.
And that was kind of something that, like you said, was drilled in our heads over the summer, as educators, evaluating our own biases and our own assumptions, and so that we're aware of kind of what perspective we're bringing into the classroom, understanding our own identities so that we can relate to others in a more authentic manner, I guess.
Right. It may not have been super fun for us to go through, but we definitely came out beneficial in creating some sort of understanding of who we are and how we relate in society, locally and globally.
Right. And so I think that the way that the challenges are structured, I definitely preferred the challenges over the lessons.
Me too.
The lessons definitely had good content there, but as English teachers, I think we're looking more for the thematically rich significance of why you would be teaching these things, and it's more of the application and the action parts of these lessons. So I really liked that one about know yourself, know your culture came earlier. And then there was challenge 8. It was, Humans of My Stuff, which was really interesting. So this one was where students had to pick an object that they have at home, and then they had to track the origin of it. And I liked how it was really multidisciplinary, because I feel like that's often what teaching English is. Yeah, we're teaching like reading skills and writing skills and speaking and listening skills, but
that covers so much more than
Right.
just learning to read a book.
Exactly.
Which is really what English is.
what we're
supposed to
getting
be.
at is
Yeah.
like, what are like these larger themes that tie humanity together that like make us tell these stories in this way. This was really interesting, again, because it's multidisciplinary. And so it starts out with that one object, and it takes kind of like an economy and commodity type perspective, and you have to trace back the commodity chain, I think is what they called it, and try to figure out like the actual cost of the product, like how much labor would have been and each like piece that went into it.
That's really interesting.
And then part of the assignment was to try to get in contact with someone, internationally, who had a say in creating this product, whether it was like in the innovation stage or they actually made it. And I feel like that'd be really hard to do depending on the product. But then there were 2 other options as well, because it seemed like the purpose of this assignment was to get to know another culture, like get to know like another human being and
To
what they
walk
might have
a mile
gone
in
through.
Someone else's shoes. To
Literally.
Finch.
Literally, the
Appropriate.
second option was, if you can't get in contact with someone, was get a 5-gallon bucket of water and carry it for a mile so that you might see, or you might experience what it feels like for most people who live on less than $2 a day.
And in a middle school classroom, where at least in DPS, they're asked to read A Long Walk to Water.
Yes, that's
Which
exactly
is-
what I thought of.
Yes, exactly.
Would you mind
what I thought of.
explaining that book
Well,
for
like-
people
Yeah.
who
So A Long Walk to Water.
So
read that
it
one?
was
I do.
about the
remember
refugees.
It was African
from
refugees in Sudan. And it took place with 2 different opposing timelines. So the intro to every chapter followed the life of this girl who walked every day, a really long, like her whole life was literally walking in the morning to go get water, walking back home to give the water, and walking again to go get more water. And in her town, over the course of the book, they decide that this company comes in or whatever, and they're going to build a well in her town, so she no longer has to do this, and she can like go to school.
And it kind of reminds me of like on Facebook the other day, it popped up like Matt
Of all
Damon
places.
is like partnered with Stella Artois or whatever. And it's so basically, they were filming these people, Americans, like this lady walks into this hotel and she's like, I'm really wanting to have a hot shower. And they're like, yeah, well, you're not going to have access to water for like the next 6 hours. And she's like, 6 hours? Like, that's a long time. Like, I really need a shower, blah, blah, blah. So they like video her freaking out. And then it cuts to this lady at a restaurant and she orders water. And the waiter's like, I'm sorry, but we're out of water. And she's like, what? Like, you're out of water? And he's like, we won't have any for like 6 hours. And he's like, is that cool? And she's like, no, that's not cool. And she's like tripping out, freaking out. And then all of a sudden, like, there's this digital screen, like, on the wall, and Damon pops up on the screen. And he's like, and then he starts basically playing and talking about what you're talking about. Like, well, this is a reality for people. They spend 6 hours of their day walking to get water, and think about, like, how they could capitalize on that 6 hours if they didn't have to do that. If they had access to water, they
right.
could go
That
to
was the whole
school, they
point.
could do this,
Yeah.
they could do that. And it literally brought people to tears.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because they were like crying and they were like, oh my gosh, like I don't really like water. It's like, it's so easily accessible for
Right.
us that we don't even think
Especially
about it.
It's hard to
here.
wrap our heads around it. And I think
Yeah.
that like brings us to question 2, because I see a connection here. The question 2 is, how might this topic or story be used to shape or inform your own teaching and learning? From a teaching perspective, like there's several reasons why we choose the books we want to teach. But I think oftentimes we want, whatever book it is, we want our kids to be able to engage with it. And especially if it's a book from a culture that maybe kids don't understand very well, or like I know for a fact that I have some Sudanese refugees in my classroom, they might be able to bring in like their own funds of knowledge to help explain it a little better. But challenges like this from an anthropology website, where you want to initially see like, oh yeah, there's a direct English connection here, this would be great to do one of those challenges with something that we're already planning to teach.
It'd be something that'd be like a
Exactly.
great activity.
That's
to,
what
like,
teaches that empathy, and they actually would be able to get into the shoes of that character a little better and maybe understand their motivations more, understand why the story is happening the way it is. And then, like, I think that we're in INTSS, I can't remember, but basically we're one of those schools where our focus is like global
Oh, it's ISSN.
impact. ISSN, thank
Because
you.
we're
Okay.
ISSN too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's
Which
my
is
whole
why I
purpose for
mentioned-
teaching. Well, one of my purposes for teaching anyway, even if we weren't in ISSN school. But I'm always interested in like how can kids take this knowledge that they have and become like human
Effective.
beings,
Mhm.
like and engagers with the world and citizens who like are active. And this is a way to do it is by like incorporating these challenges into our secondary classrooms, even though it is
absolutely.
English.
Yeah, because there's
Absolutely.
definitely, like, with the unit that I'm planning for my capstone, as you both know, is basically addresses identity and for kind of what the whole premise of this website is, where students will have to engage with the text from a perspective of someone outside of their group. And then
That's
I'm
us too.
thinking that I can add more substance to it by having my students do like one or maybe two of these challenges.
Yeah,
I think it would be
Especially
a
the
great
talking to
addition to
strangers
the unit.
one.
there's 3 steps that the students have to do if they do this entire Anthropology 101 program.
course,
But of
yeah.
course, we're talking about taking pieces of it.
Mhm.
If they do the 3 steps, the first thing they do is they read and watch the lesson. They watch like associated documentaries. They're all linked on the same page. And then sometimes there's relevant podcasts that are also linked there.
It's a lot like our class.
Yeah, it's a lot like a class. And the second thing they do is they put their new knowledge into action by taking that challenge. And each challenge, it seems like they get more challenging as they go on, as time
But definitely
passes.
more introspective.
They're more introspective,
Yeah.
and then they're more global as well. And there's at least 3 options for kids to choose if for some reason that first option doesn't work. So I think that's important to be there because
Absolutely,
sometimes
giving
kids will be like,
choice.
I can't do this.
Yeah. Well, and I think the
Um,
challenge. Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. Just one last thing. So the very last thing they do is they post their challenge results to Instagram and they use one of those hashtags that I mentioned earlier, probably more than one hashtag. And so they're doing it for the class hashtag, and then if they want to, the more like global Anthropology 101 hashtag. And so on the website, it pulls up those hashtags and you can see all these posts. And then of course, like if kids have Instagram on their phones, they can interact with it that way as well.
Yeah. And I do like that the lessons are paired with these challenges, because one of the quotes that jumped out at me that was on the website is you can't just think your way into a new way of living, you have to live your way into a new way of thinking. And so I think, I don't know, I just really like how
Well, and I
that's
think
summed up
that's
the
like
premise of
something that our generation suffers from.
Yeah.
Is that we have this, and I can think of specific examples that I won't give because they're rude, but we talk a big game, like liberal whatever stuff that we'll say. We'll talk a big game, but nobody will do anything. Whereas
and that's
like
something that I complain about often.
Me
Like,
too.
okay,
Like,
it
it's like-
takes
it's
more
an
than just
issue.
resharing like
right,
this
Like, if
social issue on Facebook
Right.
to call yourself like
Or to
agent
take-
of change,
or to take a
whatever.
selfie at a
Don't-
protest.
or to take a
Don't do
selfie at
that.
a
Yeah.
protest.
don't be those people. Like
Yeah.
actually be the change. Actually understand what you're supporting. Actually, be a part of that.
Right.
And like don't just you can do that, and that's something that we need to. It started with our generation. It's something that our generation has been very much in the forefront of, but we're just not quite fully like that process hasn't been fully evolved for us yet.
And it's good
Like,
that
we're
we're
not
at that
quite
point
there.
of like at least thinking
At
about
least
it.
we're consciously aware, but this stuff
but again,
like this,
it's
if we
like the
could-
action piece.
right. If we
Right.
could integrate stuff like this into our classroom and just this like just of global awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Well,
would be so impactful,
and talk
especially
about-
depending on where you're teaching.
Yeah, and talk about student agency. I think one of the biggest thing I see with my students who tend to succeed, even if they aren't totally proficient all the time, but like maybe they're working toward proficiency, is they are agents of their own learning and of their own knowledge, and they're the first ones to ask me a question. Or if they're more shy and walking around and they get my attention, they're the ones who don't have a pencil and they're like, I need a pencil today, miss. Like even little things like that. I think things like this, like a challenge, this might be more fun than raising your hand and asking for help in class, but this is a good way to teach them, like, if you are an active participant in the world, you're also like advocating for yourself, and that is an important life skill to have as a learner
Exactly.
and a human being.
And that's where I
Mhm.
was going to go with this. Is like so much of what like my teaching philosophy has turned into is like having respect for the people around you, holding yourself responsible to what you're supposed to be responsible for, and advocating for yourself. a lot of kids, they just don't, or they won't, or they're afraid.
Right.
Like somehow, like teachers are Dracula sleeping in the coffin under the school. Like we don't have lives. And we're gonna come and kill you because you got a B or didn't turn stuff in on time. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like we're here too. We'll have a whole conversation about
Right.
how hard our work is.
Well, and teacher involvement, one of the tips that this website had was post your own thing. Like
it was modeled
your
all by the
challenge.
professor.
It was modeled
Yeah,
by
it
the
was
professor,
modeled
but they
by
were
the
like,
professor,
you're going to
yeah.
have your own website. If you sign up,
Mhm.
model the challenge and post it for your students like at least a week in advance so that, one, they see it modeled, they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. So
You did it
pedagogically, that's
too.
great. But you did it
Exactly.
too. Like, you're holding yourself to the same standards that you're
And
holding
that
your kids.
matters.
Mhm.
It's huge.
That matters, and that's something that I feel like is so up and coming in this digital age, is that like there's a new platform for us to participate on.
Mhm.
Like we were raised with this too. We know how to use Instagram. Like
Yeah.
let's do this. Like it's not like such a generational gap. Like sometimes I'll see at my other job where you're just sitting there and you're like, what do you mean you don't have an email? You're like, not only do I have an email, but I have 14 Twitter accounts. Let's go. I don't have a single Twitter account, but you know, it's fine.
It's okay, I have plenty.
There we go. You've got enough for
I
both
don't
of
have
us.
Twitter either.
But I don't know why I use that
all
as my
good.
example, but you know, I think it's something that we can compete on this level with them, and we can engage with them on this level. So why wouldn't we? And that's so much of I think what this class is all about. But also the anthropology 101 is engaging in the modern world the way that it is.
Yeah,
Like
using
those
technology
platforms.
and, contemporary digital applications to connect with learning and the world. And I think that's
Because it matters.
It does
Because
matter.
It can. It's
Yeah.
not going away.
Mhm.
right.
We have to adapt. The internet is not going to adapt for us. We
Yeah.
have to.
Well, and it's also, I mean, they've grown up, like, that's their form of communication. That's their
Right,
form
right.
of expression. So it's, like, on us to leverage,
Exactly.
that.
And I think that creates more equity in the learning sphere too, as if you're using something that most kids already come to the table knowing versus limiting them to I just keep thinking back to like that first class we took in our program about like whiteness of education. If we're constantly pushing on them the standard, like, no, you have to write a paper about this.
Mhm.
No, you have to read this classic novel about this. Like, no, that's
Correct.
not always the best way to engage with something.
No, not
And
at
it's more
all.
empowering for a kid if they're able to prove their knowledge in multiple different ways. It's also
Mhm.
good differentiation.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's be like, no, so you can't write it. You don't want to write a paper on this. Like, you actually can't. Great. I want you to make a video. I want
Yeah.
you to draw me a beautiful picture.
Yeah.
Use all your colors. I don't
Instagram
care what you
post.
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
post on Instagram, do a Twitter. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and it's so much of like what the challenges are. Again, digital storytelling for what our challenges are is like it is pushing yourself, but it's expressing yourself in a different way
Mhm.
and finding like a voice that way, and maybe finding facets of media that we are better suited to participate in.
Yeah.
I'm not super suited for Twitter, mostly because I don't understand it. But like maybe I'm much more suited for a podcast even,
Right.
because mostly
Mhm.
all I want to do is talk about stuff.
Yeah.
And
So,
sometimes I'm funny.
yeah.
But like, you know, it just kind of depends on like giving them there isn't just one platform
Right.
anymore.
Mhm.
And that's what made me think about like democratizing this type of information and how they have to submit these challenges, because it was very specific with Instagram. And I know at least most of my kids have smartphones, but not all of them.
Mhm.
But I do
You have
know,
your choice.
I do know for a fact that we have Chromebooks for all of them in the classroom. And I haven't looked at Google Images before, but I'm sure that like there's probably a way to tag, like hashtag whatever. And
Or,
so,
I mean, even you could create like a class blog,
exactly.
and then I mean, students could like post a blog
Right.
discussion.
You do it in
on-
class.
Yeah,
They don't have
Google
to have a
Docs,
smartphone.
folder,
Exactly.
even if
There's
they
so
can
many
create a
different
PowerPoint
ways. Like that was
presentation.
limited to Instagram, but there's so
Right.
many different.
And also,
ways
like,
that you could-
kids are kids. Like, let's be real here. There was, last semester, what was that called? There was this app that you would, like, get anonymous messages, and people would just tell you what they thought of you.
Oh,
And I
wow,
can't
that
remember
sounds
what it was
horrible.
called. It started, like, with an S. No, But I got it because I wanted to see what it was. And of course I posted it on Facebook and I was like, hey people, can you just like do this? I want to see like how my kids might be engaging with it. And everyone was super nice.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, this is not the point of like, you're
Like,
supposed
you
to be
know, the
honest
7th
with
grade
me.
girls are like savage.
Right.
AF.
But like I
yeah.
learned about that from a student. And so I think that it's important to always have conversations with them about like, what are some of the new technologies you're using? What's your favorite so far?
It's building that rapport. It's understanding where
It's
those
building
kids are
rapport,
at,
and it's
like,
also like they know way more about this stuff than we do. They probably would be like,
That's
yeah,
how I
that's
feel too. Like even in digital stories, I'm like, okay, like first of all, like I would have to spend like so much time learning this particular
Yeah.
platform to teach it,
But if
but
a
at
kid
the
already
same time,
knows
they
it-
probably already know how to do it.
yeah,
right. Like,
Yeah.
why can't they?
Half the
teach
class
me
knows it,
how to
go
do
teach
it?
the other half
Exactly.
of the
They,
class.
they would need to teach me.
That's
And I'm
empowering.
show
I'm
me
okay with
how to
that,
do
too.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's
I'm okay
empowering.
admitting
Well, it
that.
is empowering, and I mean, they're leveraging their skills, and then
Right.
they feel like they have like a role in that learning community.
Right.
too.
And plus, I
They
feel like
have a
that's a good way
voice.
for them
Yeah.
to teach me. Like, if we're talking about the communal knowledge, like, I'm like, how did you find that? How did you hear about that? And I get to learn too.
Right.
And I think they like, I mean, let's be honest here. I don't just think they like it, like, they like it. They
Well,
like
yeah,
when they're
because-
able to teach me
I
something.
mean, did you not like it when you had the one up on your teacher?
Right.
Because I did.
Yeah.
I was all about that. That's what I lived my life for. I'm going to be a teacher so I can one up
Right.
a whole room
Yeah.
of people.
What was your biggest takeaway?
All the different ways I could apply this. There were so
Yeah.
many different ways where I was like, okay, I might not teach social studies, I might not teach science, but I might not teach whatever, but like, this is something that we can do cross content.
Yeah,
This
I
is
love
something
that.
that I can bring in other people.
Yeah.
I can be like,
You could do like a whole team project with
Mhm.
this. Like in middle school, we have teams. In high school, we didn't as much at Central, but
yeah.
you find
And
out
I
who
just-
most kids had for social studies or science or whatever, and you can collaborate.
Like I just led this lesson on poetry. I accidentally introduced poetry to my students, which I don't even want to talk about. But it like some of my classes did really well with all the structure, and some of my classes, like maybe it was Friday, maybe it was the fact that I was subbing. I don't know what was going on, but they just tanked. They couldn't sit there and do it. They weren't engaged, and I straight up asked them. I was like, "What is going on? What can I do?" They didn't respond. They all just shut up at that very moment because they knew I was going to cry. But they also like it. Like maybe I could use some of these. Where it's
Yeah.
like, is this a better way to get to you? Will this engage
Yeah,
you
that's some
more?
way to think about it. Like if we're, even if we're not struggling with teaching something, but maybe that's a good approach to take is, how can I incorporate this into my lesson as a challenge?
Yeah.
Something that like might be more exciting, that might make use of like these technologies that, let's be real, for a lot of assessments they can't do because it's summative and they need that practice with that essay so that they can do
Right.
well on the state exam.
Mhm.
And it's
But then at the same time, and it's like this. Any reading level can do that.
right.
Any reading level
Yeah.
can walk a mile with
Right.
a jug of water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, they may not make it the full mile because I teach a 6th grade and they're
Oh,
very
I
small.
wouldn't.
I
That's
wouldn't.
5 gallons of water.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
But
Yeah,
maybe it'd be
maybe.
powerful for them to see me fail.
Right. Or just to also see that they can fail and I can fail and it's okay and that this takes some sort of strength and it actually does take a certain kind of tenacity
Oh yeah.
to be able to carry it. All
Right.
right. It might seem simple and mundane
Right.
and like, you know, it is a third world country where they're doing those things, but like, it's like, oh, okay, this, we can't look down on you because we can't do this.
Right.
But maybe you can't do what I
Right.
just did, but I can't do what you just did either.
I think it would just help things click more. Like, if
Yeah.
like, there's,
Yeah.
there, it's one thing to read a text and to actually, and that's really like, like literally you're putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Right.
Right.
And
So-
that's the best way to engage. That's the best way to fully understand. Again, Atticus Finch is amazing
Yeah.
for a reason. That's exactly what he said. Is you can't understand anybody until you really truly put yourself in their feet, in your shoes, because you can't.
And I do think that those challenges, like they'd be like they're challenges
They're difficult.
because
They're
it's
hard.
really hard. Like
Yeah.
even some of those that I was reading, I was like, oh no, like I would
Damn, right?
give me anxiety, like
Right.
you know, to do that
But in
challenge.
like, and it's hard to be open-minded when you're 13, 12, 15, whatever,
28.
17. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a,
It's yeah.
it's
because
hard.
you're like at the center of the universe. in
Because
your mind.
being,
Yeah.
however, being a teen is hard.
Yeah.
Like some weird stuff is happening, and all your friends are bitchy. So like, it's all about you.
Mhm.
But like, is it though? No,
That's true.
it's
I think
not.
that a lot of my kids, well, I know a lot of my kids right now are having problems with friendships. And I think it sucks and it really hurts to see them go through that stuff, but also I think there's something to be said for like living through someone else's experience and having that type of empathy to maybe put things into perspective.
Well, because it helps
hopefully.
you. It might be
That might
crappy
give
while
them
it's
better
happening.
like coping skills, or I don't know, but
It's gonna help them grow as adults.
Yeah.
Like no matter how the
teach
situation
the whole
turns
human.
out, they will learn something.
Mm-hmm.
Like something will come out of a challenge like that. Maybe reading
Yeah.
a book like A Long Walk to Water, where I was moved by that book. I
Right.
loved that book, and I read
And
it.
even
I
if
was
it's just like
engaged.
assessing like where you're at, like
Right.
I thought my stuff was rough, but
Right. Yeah.
you know.
But I think that's how everybody feels. Is you're like I feel like my stuff was rough too. But like I heard about your stuff, and I'm like, damn girl, your stuff was really rough. But like, and sometimes where it's like you'll hear that. I didn't mean to use you as an example like that. But like you'll hear about other people's stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe everybody's stuff is rough. There's a whole
To different
Yeah.
degrees.
right.
Yeah.
There's a whole concept. It's actually this coffee
Also,
shop.
like human experience. Like I think it's
Yeah.
easier to find connections between your
Yeah.
classmates.
That's
and,
how
like,
you
people
find.
who are
That's
around the
some
world.
of the deepest connections you can make. Are
Yeah.
like, oh, you went through that painful thing too. Like,
Mhm.
let me tell you about mine. We can like be
Exactly.
friends, and
Yeah,
we can grow,
exactly.
and we can like be these people together. Like that's a lot of how our
Right.
friendship formed. Is like talking about that
Right.
stuff.
To wrap this up, maybe we could all say one thing that we plan to take away from Anthropology 101.
I would say again I was just thinking of how I wanted to word it, but I would
You're
say
good.
again like the challenge is like bringing the content to life, like really kind of inserting
Immersing
like,
yourself.
immersing yourself
Yeah.
in the learning.
Yeah. Which is such a novel concept.
Right. I like that a lot, and I'm going to try that. I also like this more global idea of publishing work, because I think that publishing whatever you're working on is often an intimidating concept, but kids have the ability to do that all the time. And so I want them to be able to feel proud of the things that they produce and then share with them. And also, if we do this over like a number of years, it'd be cool for kids, like current students,
Like
to see like past.
portfolio-wise.
Exactly, and see
Exactly.
past students and
They
how
do
that
that
compares.
at my school. By the
Oh,
way.
that's
You
cool.
love it.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
There we go.
No,
All
keep
right.
that on the list. But I think I want to take away the concept of like analyzing who you are. Like when we were in methods last semester, she said there was one of the women, I don't remember which one, was giving that presentation and made us take the multiple intelligences test.
Yes,
Oh,
And that was
yes.
something that was
Yeah.
like, I never forgot that. Literally, it took me 20 minutes to do the
Mhm.
math because I literally can't do numbers
Made
at
me
all.
question why I
Yeah.
wasn't a math teacher.
I mean, literally, I was sitting there and I was like, can I not add? What is going on? Like, I have about to have
Yeah.
a fucking master's degree and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And, but like, understanding how you learn.
Mhm.
And how, like, and again, analyzing just who you are and where you're coming from. Like, what is your culture? What is your socioeconomic background? What is the perspective that you see the world? So that you can understand that and then be able to read something else and not have it be just colored by yours. You're able
Right.
to see it from a fourth wall.
Make reading more
Mhm.
engaging. Gosh, I
Right.
wish I had time to talk about that.
Right? And, you know, it's just about
I'm reading
like,
read aside. Read it. Read it. Anyway,
Yes.
that's all we have time for.
Alrighty.
Amazing.
Thank you for joining us with our
Yeah,
dialogue.
thank
Until next
you.
time, live your best
Bye.
life.
Live your best life.
Live your
Thrive.
best life.